it's quite amazing, Peter, because coming up through the southern states, as we did some of the battleground states, there's a lot of theatre, there's a lot of animation. The people are really outwardly talking about their politics and enthusiastic about it. Here in DC, there's a sense of foreboding, isn't there? There's a tension in the town. So many buildings are being boarded up. This very building we're standing on is being boarded up today. So people are worried about what's going to happen. And there are some Trump supporters in town, not many. I caught up with a few of them today, and they're sort of cheering along and hoping that Donald Trump can get 4 more years. But most of the people here are Democrat supporters. Yeah. Some I spoke to today came all the way from Seattle in Washington because they want to see Trump go down. They're going to be mightily confused and upset if it doesn't happen.
I've had these conversations with Annalise quite often lately about the difference in opinion when you're out in those rural and regional areas where the polls suggest, well, OK, let's single out Pennsylvania. The polls suggest it's going to head to Biden. But when you go to these rural and regional areas, the people are for Trump. It's Trump territory. What have you found when you're outside the cities? Oh,
absolutely. You can almost draw a line on the map, can't you, where you get into rural areas or industrial areas, semi-rural industrial areas. There's a lot of overt Trump support, and it's different in the cities. And, you know, it sounds strange, might sound strange to Australians, but you can actually identify these areas by the level of mask wearing. Wearing a mask seems to be almost a political statement as well as a health concern in this country, which is kind of weird, but that's the way it's turned out. I think we've seen a change, though, even in the last 10 days in the whole outlook here. You would have seen it yourself early on. The Democrats were talking about picking up Texas, Florida, in which case it would be a rout, a landslide for Biden. Now they're not talking so much about those states. It's about Ohio. It's about Pennsylvania. It's about those crucial Midwestern states that got Trump the presidency in the first time. And if Biden can just pinch a couple of those back, he'll get a narrow victory.
What's your hunch in Florida?
I think Florida's OK for Trump. My hunch is that he'll be all right there, and I think Texas as well. I think he's OK. And I think it's going to be fought out in the Midwest, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Ohio, in Michigan. That's what it's all about. Look out for a smoky. Trump could pick up Minnesota. But, you know, the pollsters... I've been talking to pollsters. I have one on my show tonight at 5 o'clock, Matt Towdry, who got the last election right, one of the few to get it right. He says the pollsters haven't learned their lessons. He says they're all getting it wrong again. He says it is much closer. Now, he's not prepared to call it for Trump, but he says it's much closer than most of the polls have it at the moment, and it will come down to a real ground battle in those states.
If these are, and just finally here, if these are the last days of the Trump presidency, and he's got a few months until inauguration in January next year. But if this is the end, has he lost this because of coronavirus? Is there any other reason? Or is it just because it's so divided at the moment?
Well, there are all these other reasons because of the hatred of him, the sort of character flaws he has. But you're right, without the coronavirus, his economic success story would have carried him home. There's no doubt about that. I think we're all certain about that late last year, that the economic recovery in the US and him standing up to China publicly, making America great again, would have carried him through. The coronavirus, rather than directly blaming him for the virus, I don't think too many people are that silly, to be frank. But some say he's mismanaged it. But more importantly, it's completely destroyed his economic recovery message. So that's the problem. You're talking about, of course, if he does lose, he serves through till January the 20th when there's an inauguration.
How's that going to go?
We normally talk about lamed up presidents, don't we? This will be more like a wounded bull president. God knows what he would do in the coming months.
Yeah, I mean, will there even be a result tomorrow?
Well, that's the big thing. I would expect not. I hope so. You can't rule it out. But there's every chance that we'll be waiting at least a couple of days for a result. And don't forget, we could wait weeks. There could be legal challenges. Remember, 20 years ago, we had to wait about 6 weeks before Florida was decided in the courts to give George W. Bush the presidency.
Yeah. You got another pair of those gloves?
Yeah, you need them, mate. You've got to get them. Especially when you're here at 1 o'clock in the morning. You've got the easy shift.
I need the gloves. I need the long johns. I'm freezing at the moment.